We have Cole Brauer on, the first woman from the United States to sail single-handedly around the world, nonstop and unassisted.
It took 130 days, which is 4 months and 1 week, and 1 hour if you're really counting.
What if there's no wind?
You wait. I had so many people tell me it's not possible. Everything that I did would not be possible.
I'm your host, Jason Rasnick, founder of Benzinga, a leading platform in the financial world with the mission to level the playing field for individual investors. And this is the Raz Report podcast, where we share inspiring stories, expert advice, and exclusive perspectives to keep you ahead of the ever-changing world of investments and entrepreneurship. Let's dive into the show.
I'm excited for this edition of the Raz Report. We have Cole Brauer on, the first woman from the United States to sail single-handedly around the world, nonstop and unassisted. I mean, how do you do that?
Lots of confidence and lots of practice.
Like over like how many days did this happen?
It took 130 days, which is 4 months and 1 week, and 1 hour if you're really counting.
Okay. And how big is the sailboat?
She's 40 feet, so she's pretty small.
Okay. And like in the middle of the night, you're sailing, you're sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
How do you like make sure you don't hit another boat?
I have a ridiculous amount of technology on the boat. And so the boat is set up, which is actually really funny because I believe that cars are kind of archaic, where on boats now we've set up so many different ways to, auto drive and prevent collisions and work with, pretty high level professionals. And we also, within, the industry, we're really good about like, okay, if there's a collision, we try to handle it like on the water versus like bringing lawyers and things like that later on. So it's, yeah.
Is there like a radar laser thing? So in cars, I feel like cars should be more like airplanes where there's a radius that like don't even let you hit the car. Like I have a Tesla, which is pretty automated and beeps,
Yep.
But I did back into my mother-in-law's car out of the garage because I didn't look at the camera because I didn't know that she parked behind me in the garage this past weekend. And I feel like it should have like stopped right before I hit the car, like that's what I feel like it should have done.
Yeah, probably. I think that some cars are getting into that, but a lot of people are pushing against self-driving cars. But when you're offshore, I mean, I would say 95% of, boats, sailboats and motorboats have autopilots, which means they're self-driving. And so I can sleep at night knowing that I have my autopilot running and all my AAS alarms, which just is a fancy term for making sure that I don't run into anything. And it lets me know within a certain like close point. So that there's all these different ways that I can set on my alarms. And so I usually have it within a mile. And so within an hour. So within an hour, if this boat is within 1 mile of me, it will set off this alarm. And so I have plenty of time. I have an hour to then make a decision. I communicate with the other boat, and we kind of make an educated decision on both of our paths on where we go. So there's a big conversation involved.
Yeah. I mean, I have so many questions, Cole. So how old were you when you started sailing?
I didn't start sailing till I was 19. That's
what I thought, like in college, basically.
Yeah, in college. So really late. Most kids start when they're like in the womb. Their parents are sailors.
Yeah. You were like University of Hawaii and you like started sailing. I like, how'd you start that late and then like become this crazy sailor?
I think
was it because of your twin sister? Like when she started in high school, then you're like, okay, I want to do this?
No, I thought sailing was pretty boring because it was pretty slow. The boats that they train you on when you're a kid are really slow, and they're
like a sunfish.
Yes, sunfish, opties, lasers. They're okay.
Lasers, yeah.
Yeah, they're okay. They're fine. I've raced on them before, but I think when you get into, if you just jump right into college sailing and then you're in Hawaii, it's pretty much like you start jumping on like one of the fastest boats. You get into skiff sailing and offshore sailing, and so it's like training for the Olympics. And if you do that for long enough, you become pretty on top of it.
Yeah. So were you just like, you started, did you just make the sailing team at the University of Hawaii when you first tried out? Like you had no experience. That's what I'm like. How'd that
Yeah,
happen?
no, I had no experience. I actually lied on an email saying that I did have experience. So that's how I got my foot in the door. And I still actually have that email saying like, oh, I have a ton of experience. I'd love to come and try out. And they were like, sure, whatever. Like, come on the first day of practice that you can. And so then I showed up, and because of NCAA rules, since it's a varsity sport, they allow more women than men because the football team at the University of Hawaii is massive. And and that's just Title IX. And so they allowed as many women to be on the team as possible, but they only allowed 9 guys. And when they found out that my name was Cole, they thought I was Guy. And so they were like, oh no, we already have our, our whole, group in, because I was joining 3 weeks late. And then it just happened to work out that I showed up and I was a woman, and they looked at me. They asked me how much I weigh, which is not an insulting thing in the sailing world. You have to, pretty much state how much you weigh to get into any regatta, and you have to stand on a scale. Okay. So it's pretty normal. And so I, at that time, weighed like just under 100 pounds. I was really small, and they pretty much gave.
What's your height?
I'm 5'2". Well,
okay.
I'm 5'1 3/4", but I like to be 5'2".
Yep. And you weighed under 100. So could they want you to not to weigh, they want you to be light, so there's less weight on the boat, I assume?
Yeah. So there's an optimal weight on the college sailing boats. And so, of course, there's lots of really big guys. And so to balance it out, they have to put it with really small girls, or vice versa. Like a really small guy needs to go with a larger woman. And that's how you balance out the boat. And that's in all classes, along all professional racing. And so there's always this balance scheme of like, okay, this is the optimal weight for the boat to be racing at its, best possible. Same with like flying airplanes, or even racing Formula One. There is like a specific optimal weight and optimal height. And I happen to fall in on that optimal weight and that optimal height. So. Okay.
So let's just go back to your email that you lied about. Again, we're with Cole Brauer, sailed the world nonstop unassisted. When you went, and you said you have all this experience, you went to the thing, and I know they thought you were a boy, so then they said, oh, we're full, but then they learned you're a girl or a woman, so then you got there. But did you know basic stuff like port, tack, how to, change the thing when you pull the rope and all that? I did sailing way long ago. So did you know basic stuff?
No, I knew absolutely nothing.
I don't understand. Nothing. So then what made you send this email? This is like the craziest thing ever. It's like you played hockey for 20 years and all of a sudden you send an email, I want to join the golf team. Like I'm really like, this is crazy to me. This is like, this should be like a movie.
Well, isn't it like, didn't Michael Jordan go and try to be a baseball player at one point?
Yes, yeah. yes. But he also I think he played in high school. High school, maybe he didn't, but I'm assuming he did. I mean, so you went and showed up and you're like, I'm in the sailing team. Did they know you didn't know how to sail once you got there?
I mean, I think that they could kind of understand because I didn't have a legacy. They had never heard of me before. And sailing is a super tight-knit community. Like everyone knows each other in the entire country, and if not in the world. Like it's.
So when you showed up to practice, they just taught you and you just learned like a sponge.
Yeah. I mean, I learned fairly quickly in everything that I do. And so this was just another thing where the guy that they appointed me as my partner, he was super determined that we were going to make nationals a year later. And so we did a pretty intensive, just like sitting down, going over the rules, going over, the halyards, the sheets, what everything's called, and how to tack, how to jibe, how to, what everything you really need to do. And then tactical advantage, which is really important. So from the beginning or the onset of my career, we went over tactics, and tactics are one of the hardest things for people to learn, and they're not taught to kids. Tactics are usually taught much later on. And I think that's a total disservice because if you don't learn tactics pretty early, it's like learning a language. Like once you don't have it, it's really, really hard to learn.
Like what's a tactic?
Tactics are where if you're racing a specific boat in a specific class and you have like let's say you're racing on the course and you have on the right side of the course, you have some clouds coming down, and then on the other side, you don't have clouds coming down on the other side. I would know that I want to go to where the clouds are not, but that's weather and tactics. And so I already know from stealing these ideas from everyone else and then practicing it on my own that like the better tactical advantage, the place where you want to be on the race course is going to be on like, let's say the left side of the course. And so weather routing and tactics are something that it's kind of like a dark magic for some reason in the sailing world. And it was taught to me from the very beginning. And I think that definitely helps.
So you started sailing at 19?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What age did you do the 130 days?
29.
Okay. So 10 years. Did you and your partner, like the guy that was like saying, let's go win this thing, did you guys achieve that?
We didn't win, but we made nationals, which was the important
You made
part.
nationals.
Yeah.
Okay. When you were training for nationals and doing all that stuff, was it also working out, like, running, exercising, lifting weights? Is that part of it?
Yeah. So when I was at the University of Hawaii, we were appointed a personal trainer for the sailing team. And that's because we're a varsity team. And so we worked, we had like 5 a.m. trainings with the athletic trainer. And then in the afternoons was when we would go out sailing. So,
okay. So you lived a pretty systematic, a disciplined life. You probably went to bed like at 10 p.m., got up at 4:30, or earlier? I don't even know.
Yeah, pretty much. I had a job in college, so I worked kind of late. I worked nights. So after I was finished training, then I worked as a tutor, and then I had classes during the day. But I tried to be in bed pretty early. I think that, for that range of time that you're awake, training, studying, working, it's trying to get to bed pretty early. And Hawaii's good for that. They don't have sororities or fraternities or, big parties or crazy things. I think I always recommend the University of Hawaii because
Where is it in Hawaii? Is it the Big Island?
it's on Oahu. So it's the most populated island of them all. But it's really nice because everyone was super athletic, in shape. Like no one was doing drugs. No one was drinking profusely. It wasn't your typical university experience. And I think that's super important versus like my sister went to Cornell. She was part of a sorority. There was tons of drinking. It was just like, for me, that's completely unnecessary. For if you want to be an athlete, you need to be able to like focus and, get into whatever you want to get into and just go to bed early, wake up early, and then be ready for the day and hopefully do well in school also. That's just a bonus.
Yeah. Your point is that drinking doesn't help you get to your goal. So why do you need to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We do. I think we do like now that I think that it's just the partying in general. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love a good party, but I don't think that would have helped me in my university career. And instead of partying and going out and doing stuff like that, I focused pretty heavily on my grades.
I'm going to preview this. We're going to get to it. This 130-day trip, there's some things, the injury in a rib, dehydration, but we're going to get to that in a second. Yeah. You grew up in Long Island, and then you go to Hawaii. Were your parents sad to see you go so far away?
Yeah, I went to SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. That's where I did my freshman year. And then I transferred from there to Hawaii. And my parents were not super stoked because my dad doesn't like airplanes. So he would come down and visit me in Savannah. And then all of a sudden I was like,
yeah. So why'd you transfer after 1 year to Hawaii after that's a big change.
Yeah, it's a pretty big change. I realized, like my mom had gotten diagnosed with cancer. And so I started focusing really heavily on nutrition and working out, and I was running marathons, and I was just really, really focused on like my health and the health of my family. And then my art kind of got lost in that. And I mean, I love art. I'm sure you can see my Instagram. I mean, I edited 95% of those videos and I did most of the photography, and I like art a lot and I've never lost that fully, but the nutrition side became so important that I started looking for schools that had a good nutrition program, and the University of Hawaii had a good one. And I also loved the idea of, living near the water. I mean, when I was in Savannah, I was in a city, and it was kind of a little constricting.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, so now so 19, you started sailing, you're in college, you sail at college. When did you have this thing, I want to sail the world unassisted, alone? When did you have this vision, Cole?
I think there was a few times. I think when I got out of college, I had made the decision that I wanted to, race around the world. And there's a couple ocean races that are really big, but they're usually on fully crewed boats. And it's usually the teams are super male dominated, and the guys are massive. And I don't fit the bill at all for those teams. And they were killing themselves out there. Like, they would come back after the race would be done, and they would look 10, if not 20 years older, because they don't wear sunscreen and they don't care. And they're going into surgery because they've pulled their backs out, or, whatever it is. Or they died. Unfortunately, a lot of them die, because they're.
Why do they die?
Because unfortunately, they're pushing these boats so hard, and the boats are not designed to protect like humans. And so there's no protection from the water. And so what happens is that these giant waves kind of wash over the boat, and it makes it really tricky to drive. And that can like lift equipment off the boat and hit you, and it can, wash you off the boat. There's lots of reasons why people have died in the ocean race, but it's,
okay.
I really wanted to change that whole, it just never seemed right. They would come back, and I remember sitting there once, and I had made the decision I wanted to go around the world alone. I didn't know when at that point, because it takes lots of money and sponsorship and things like that. And I was sitting there with some of the athletes that had gone around the world in these crews, and they're these big dudes. And they were saying how miserable it was and how awful it is. And we were talking to a group of fourth graders. These are like our next generation that could get into sailing. And then the panel, it was a panel, and it finally got to me. And I was like, I don't know if this is really as bad as all you guys keep talking about. But that was their brand. Their brand was showing that this is miserable. It's hard. It's awful. It's so hard. Only the top, 0.0001% could ever do this thing. And I just kept thinking, I don't think that's true. I think that you can have fun with it. I think that there's a way to do it that's safe, that's enjoyable, and then it's fun to watch. Because it's not really fun to watch them go be miserable out there for, months.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So you're at this Q&A, and you're like, what, 24 at the time?
I was a little bit older. I was probably 26 at the time. Yeah.
Were you working elsewhere at this point?
I was a boat captain. I was working on a Class 40, which is the boat that I ended up going around the world on. And I was working, just fixing up boats. I, delivered boats, moved boats around. I was a professional racer. I was doing pretty much anything that people would pay me to do in the racing industry, because, you don't always, get what you want. And so I was just doing things, trying to get as much training as I possibly could and as many miles. That was one thing that my mentor, said really, really early on, is just go and get as many miles offshore that you can, because the more miles offshore, the more likely that you can establish your skills and faster.
But when you're saying get as many miles, is this person saying in races or being a boat captain on like excursions and stuff?
Both. So, what I did for work for a long time was I would move people's boats from point A to point B for them for the racing season. And then when they were done, so what would happen is that I would move the boat, let's say
by yourself?
Sometimes by myself, depending. A lot of times by myself. Sometimes with just one other person. And I would move them, let's say like 1,000 miles or something. And then you drop it off and you wait. And then, the race crew jumps on, they do their race, and then they jump off. They leave all their trash. They leave all the gear. They leave the boat a mess, and then they get on airplanes and they leave. And then I stay, clean up the boat, get it ready to go, and then move it back home and then get paid for that. That's what I did for years.
But are these the boats that you said were kind of dangerous because they were, they don't protect the person? They're.
Yeah, I did a couple of those types of boats. I did smaller boats, medium, and then the ones that I was talking about were much bigger. Yeah, so lots of training.
They would have a bunch of people on the boat when they sailed up, and then you would sail it back by yourself, basically.
Yeah, sometimes it was like, because you can use the engine, you can motor when you're doing these deliveries and stuff. And so you're not going to sail with as much sail area, which
got it.
I'm not going to put up as big sails. I'm not going to be doing dangerous stuff.
So you're going to use the motor. Will you have enough gas then?
Yeah, depending. I mean, a lot of times you're sailing or motor sailing. Moving boats around, you bring as much fuel as you can, more or less.
So when you did your 130-day sail, did you use a motor?
No, of course not. No. That's
not at all, right?
Only like if you run the engine, it has to be in idle. So you never put it into gear, but you run it for I ran it for heat in the Southern Ocean.
But how cold did it get in the Southern Ocean?
The coldest I got was 38 degrees Fahrenheit. That was the coldest.
Wow. Okay. And you run it for heat. What if there's no wind?
You wait.
Did that happen a lot?
Not a lot. It didn't happen that much in the Southern Ocean. It happened in the Atlantic when I was coming back up, towards the finish. It happened. The trade winds were having a really hard time and they were being shut down. And that's a whole different conversation of why that's happening. But the trade winds were being shut down.
What's that mean? What's the trade winds are being shut down?
So on this planet, there's two types of trade winds. You have the northeast and you have southeast trade winds. And that's just because of the way that the earth rotates. And so when I was in the southeast trades, what would happen is that because of global warming, we're getting much more of these storms that are coming in and they're shutting down these prevailing wind conditions that have been with us for the last 10,000 years. And so sailors are having a lot harder time sailing around because our weather models, what we look at is from the last 10 years, and all of this is changing so drastically within the last 2 years that a lot of our weather models that we've been looking at are now false. And so I had a really hard time getting back up north in the Atlantic after I rounded Cape Horn in South America. I had good breeze, decent breeze, and then I got to a point where there was nothing for 5 days. Nothing. No wind. So I floated for 5 days, which is really, really strange for a race boat to be floating for that long in that specific spot. It was really strange. So,
Were your parents worried about you on this trip?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My mother's hair is still falling out.
I mean, so you had a Starlink, Elon Musk internet connection. So were you able to watch YouTube if you wanted to? And
I could watch everything. I was 100%. It's better Wi-Fi than your home Wi-Fi. It's because
no way.
Oh, 100%. It's the best Wi-Fi you can get in the world. It's
really the Starlink you're talking about?
Yeah. Oh yeah. People now are buying it for their own homes and putting it on their roof because it's way better than getting some, terrible service from, whatever. I have it for the van. It's fabulous.
But if you didn't have Starlink, what would you have done?
You use other services, but they're far more expensive and they don't work as fast. So their bandwidth, for me, per month, I had a terabyte of data that I could use, and that's what we were paying for. So it was $1,000 a month, and I had a terabyte of whatever I wanted, which I never even got close to using a terabyte. And then I had a problem with Starlink in the Southern Ocean, and then Starlink ended up comping us for the rest of the trip, which was kind of nice. So I didn't pay any more monthly service or whatnot. And the satellite, the actual modem's only $2,500, which sounds like a lot of money. It's not compared to the other modems, because the other modems, if I was to upload and do the exact same thing that I had done, it would have cost probably $500,000 to do what I did. And
No
instead,
way.
it only cost me $1,000 a month.
No way.
Yeah.
Because that's crazy. Did you have a bunch of sponsors for this trip?
I had two brothers who were sponsored. They're not related to me, but they're what we call angel investors. So what they do is that they don't want anything, they don't want their name anywhere. They're completely behind the scenes, and they are just two really nice guys that wanted to make my dream come true.
Okay. And how'd you find them?
They were my training partners at one point,
Okay.
and I didn't know that they had any money or anything like that. And we, like as a team, were kind of hanging out, and they would constantly ask me. I've known them for 5 years now. 5 years. Like, I've stayed in their house. I know their wives. I know their girlfriends, their people. And so we're kind of more like family.
Hopefully not the same time, the wife and the girlfriend.
No, definitely not.
Wait. Did you get bored?
Anytime I got bored, I would just make a reel or something. It was good.
So you would sit on this boat all day, going every day to sit on this boat, walk around it, sit on it, and you were good.
Yeah, there was tons of weather routing. I was constantly communicating with like the outside world, and then changing sails, because you have to change the sails a lot. I had 10 sails on board, so there was lots of different combinations that I could use for different weather conditions. And so there was a lot of work other than, what people saw, I think.
So you'd have to take the sail down, put a whole new sail up. So there's a lot of work you have to do with this. And you injured a rib, you suffered dehydration, and you gave yourself IV fluids. Tell us about all this, because that's, yeah.
Yeah, so I knew that I was going to have a lot of naysayers when I first started the campaign, mostly because I had already had so many naysayers for so long. And so what I did was that I was like, I'm going to stop all the possibility of naysayers, and I'm going to hire a nurse and a doctor to be with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so first I hired them for 2 weeks of really intensive medical training, after I had already done 10 days of a different third-party medical training. And so I hired this team. They're amazing. It's Regatta Rescue, if anyone wants to look it up. And they're really cool. They work with sailors, but they're also an actual doctor, an actual nurse that work in a hospital. And so they set up my whole medical kit. They organized the whole thing. And then they trained me beforehand to actually work with IVs and fluids.
So this is probably a dumb question, but so you got dehydrated, you had to give yourself an IV. My dumb question is, why just not drink some electrolytes, like Gatorade electrolytes?
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure that I had the quickest possible way of getting healthy, because what happens is that when you're offshore, you just can't replenish that quickly. And since you don't have that much time to actually rest and recover, and even there's no ice, there's no nothing, it's just, you're kind of out there with nothing. That we needed to be able to be quick and efficient, especially when you're racing at that kind of high level, and you have, you need something when someone's chasing you. So you have all these other racers that are chasing you down the course, and you're chasing these other racers, and you really need to be able to be focused. And dehydration is majorly bad for focus, and you can get dangerously hurt quickly. And so there's not that much time to actually like sit in a cool, dark place and drink fluids and maybe put some ice under your pits to relax yourself and, bring your body temperature down. There's no time for that, unfortunately.
How did you know you were dehydrated?
When I had been vomiting and shitting myself, we could kind of tell that was going to be a pretty big dehydrator. And then I did it again right before I entered the Southern Ocean because I wanted to make sure that I was 100% ready to go for that. That's like climbing Mount Everest. So you want to make sure you're really healthy before you get there.
And you giving yourself the IV, you weren't nervous because you knew how to do it at that point.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those situations where if you just can't think about it, because of course, like I don't like needles at all, but they had pointed to, we had found one vein that I was going to use at all times. So it's not like I was trying to go for other areas and digging around, and I know that sounds really sketchy, but when you have a nurse and they have to take blood or something and they don't know your veins very well and they have to dig around and it's painful and you bruise yourself, I knew that one vein, how deep it was and how far I needed to go in. And I only used that specific one because I knew it very well. But if I had to dig around, it would have been sketchy.
It's still amazing putting the needle in, you did it. And it's, what kind of food did you eat?
I ate astronaut food, so it's like freeze dried.
Okay. And from a physical and a mental preparation for the race, what kind of stuff did you have to do?
Nothing.
Really?
Nothing too crazy. I mean, I had already been. The biggest thing that I did was I raced my qualifier, or I sailed my qualifier across the Atlantic Ocean. And so I went from Newport to Spain, and that took 14 days. And that was my qualifier. And so that prepared me. I went over, what my sails were and what range, wind conditions that they could handle. And it made it much easier because it got myself into that type of solo long distance. So that was probably the biggest mental and physical thing that I did. That was probably
okay. What was the scariest moment that you faced with and the most frustrating moment of your journey?
I don't think I really had any scary, like true scary moments. I had anxiety for sure. I think my biggest anxiety moment was definitely like coming into the finish. It was definitely really, really breezy coming into the finish, and I was pretty nervous about it because I just wanted to finish. And when you're coming in, there's also lots of cargo ships, fishermen, and when it's blowing like that, you have to be really, really careful. So I didn't really sleep the night before. I mostly just like tried to watch Netflix and, chill out before coming into the finish. So I didn't sleep very much.
Because like there were like 30-foot waves, like, right? Like you had hurricane winds at one point, and like you were like flying around on the boat. Did the boat get injured? Did it have damage?
No, the boat was doing just fine. She's a tank. Okay. She was doing just fine. I mean, when I flew across the boat, that was halfway through the trip when I was in the Southern Ocean, and she pretty much like what that video doesn't show is that the boat just rights itself and just keeps going. Like even though I'm on the side of the boat, just like bruised and broken and hurting and moaning and stuff, and she's just sailing right along as if nothing had happened. So that's just. These boats are really made to be able to handle these types of conditions.
So I assume you had the support team on standby. Were they there, or were they there to help you if you got like in a major jam? Would someone come and got you?
Yeah, I mean, I could call them and talk to them, but the biggest problem is that nobody could get to me. If I was in the Southern Ocean, the quickest that anyone could get to me was probably a week.
Holy moly. So like that, seriously? So you had something going on, it would take a week. Oh, and your parents let you do this. Holy cow.
I don't think that they wouldn't ever let me do it. I think that they just didn't really have a choice.
Oh my God. So did your parents want you to do this again?
No, maybe, probably not. I mean, I want to do it again. I don't think that they want me to ever do it again. I think my dad's getting on board about it. I think he thinks it's cool now. But
Oh
uh,
my God.
I think my mom is like, can we not? And say we did.
And this was pretty expensive to do. Like the boat costs money. I know the angel investors. So like you finish this race, you have a world record. What happens then? Like does everyone do you get everyone celebrating you? They get a bunch of money, all that stuff.
No, I wish it was like golf, but it's not.
Do you
It's
golf?
not. Yeah, golf would be awesome
But do you
because
golf?
yeah, golf, they make bank. I
I know,
mean,
but
after they
are you a good golfer?
No, I'm terrible.
That's what I was thinking.
No, I'm terrible. No. But I think that it's so different because when you finish, there is no, I would say there's almost no money in it at all. It's just pride, but that's just sailing. Sailing in general, there's really, I mean, I had prize fund money that came in, and I plan on donating that to the University of Hawaii. That's the plan.
So what are you doing now?
Right now, I meet with publishers this week. I'm writing a book and I'm trying to get back to a normal life where I'm out racing and hanging out with my girlfriends, drinking rosé in Newport, Rhode Island.
So is the book about like coming to this male dominated sport and being a badass?
It's about right now it's actually about just it's about the race, and then it brings back flashbacks of like how I got to the race and like what was the things that I used throughout the race that I had learned throughout my childhood, and in high school
Give me an
and
example of something from like your childhood that you used in the race.
I've always loved nature, and I've always been very close with nature. And I think because of my closeness with nature, I was able to predict how things were going to happen when I was completely offshore alone. And I think that's super important that a lot of people forget that nature doesn't make shit up. It's really good about predicting. Like we can predict it by just looking at the clouds, at the weather, and being outside and its environment. I mean, the birds and the animals have been able to predict this type of weather without looking at the weather channel for, you know, a billion years. But us humans, because we lock ourselves away so much, we're so disconnected from nature. And when I was a kid, I wasn't at all. My parents were like the, go drink out of the hose type of parents. And I think that helped me a lot in my around the world race, because other people were afraid and had, pretty severe anxiety, and everyone was growing beards. I mean, I'm not going to grow a beard, but they were pretty afraid. And I don't think I was ever really afraid, because nature doesn't make shit up. It's pretty predictable.
Did you get anxiety over being on a boat for 130 days and like missing out on other stuff, or like you have bills to pay or rent or anything like that?
I don't rent anything. I live out of a van, so I'm pretty nomadic
Yeah,
as
yep,
as
that's
is.
true. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, the taxes thing was really weird. That was like one of my only panic attacks I had, was over trying to do my bookkeeping offshore and just bouncing around and trying to work on my computer and with like a little Excel spreadsheet. It was like really frustrating, really, really frustrating. And yeah, anything that had to do with being back home, I didn't miss, mostly because my friends are really good and they're in the industry, so they understand, and they were really good about keeping in touch with me.
So how long have you lived out of a van for?
I think this is my 7th year.
So where are you right now?
I'm up in Maine, visiting my family right now.
Okay. So they're probably happy that you're there.
Yeah, they're really happy I'm here.
Yeah. I actually started writing a book, didn't finish it. I interviewed a bunch of people about how they lived in their car, like when they were like homeless, and this whole thing,
Yeah,
and like how they got out of their car. It's a whole, yeah. It's like, so I
that's
lived
really
in my car
cool.
for a week. Yeah. I've lived in my car for a bit. And, all right, couple fun, quick questions. But so you're staying in sailing, because when I see you, I'm just like admire, like, oh my God, I wish I could be like her. Now I started Benzinga. It was in my basement. There was no one. Then 150 people. I sold a majority interest in 2021. It was like on CBC. It was a deal. But I look at you and I'm like, oh my God, she is so much better. She's like so much disciplined. When I was asking what you're doing now, I'm like, because anyone would hire you with that kind of discipline and work ethic. I mean, like I just like looking at myself. I'm like, what a waste of anything.
No, I am like, don't worry. I'm a complete. It really,
No, you're
I
not.
have so much motivation in one way, and then, but like answering back emails and being like an actual like citizen of society, I'm so bad at it. I'm
Oh, you
like,
are? Okay.
it's awful. Like people are like, why don't you answer your phone? And I'm like, because I'm outside. I'm in nature. I don't know. I left it. It's on Do Not Disturb. And people like, if you're not out with me, I'm probably not there. I'm not going to answer. And so yeah, I'm really bad at that.
Are you looking to like have a family and all that?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, I have a partner, and he's very patient with me, and yeah, of course, I would like a family one day, and but the biggest concern is like I never pictured myself having a family in a van, and especially not my van's quite small, and my partner and we live out of my van together, and it's really even tight with us, and so I don't really. I think one day. It's just right now my life is so chaotic.
But you would rather be in the van versus like a house or a apartment?
I'd rather not pay any rent.
but let's say money's no issue. Let's say your book does $10 million in sales and you get $2 million. You don't want to pay any rent still.
I would probably buy a house. I'd probably buy a house. I'd probably buy a house if I had money was no limit.
No limit.
I would buy a house in Europe, so my partner can go kiteboarding. I would buy a house in Miami, because I actually love Miami. I would buy a house in Newport, Rhode Island, and I'd buy a house in Maine.
You don't need so many houses.
I mean, then it's like having the van where I just drive everywhere instead of driving. I just go to my different house. I mean,
the only problem is you have more things to take care of then, and then you'll have to like you'll like forget to flush a toilet and you'll have a flood in one of the places, and you said you're not good at
yeah, no, that's true. That's why I took the toilet out of First Light, the boat I sailed around the world on.
Yeah.
I didn't want any sort of maintenance issue, so I went in a bucket for 4 months.
Really?
Yeah, it's great.
And what do you do with the stuff?
Throw it overboard, wash out the bucket, done, move on.
Wonderful. Wonderful. This is all right. Do you have a favorite quote or piece of advice that you think could be a game changer for people listening in to Cole Brauer, the person who sailed the world? Anything, a piece of advice that you'd like to share?
I just think don't think what other people don't believe everything that people say about you. Like if they say that you're crazy or that that you shouldn't be doing this or that or whatever, just don't listen to them. They're screaming into the ether for no reason. I had so many people tell me it's not possible. Everything that I did would not be possible. And I just kept doing it and ignoring them, and then going and crying in my van by myself, and just then waking up the next day and going back out there and doing it again, and it's not worth it.
Your Hawaii coaches must be pretty impressed, given that you were brand new and then sailed the thing. Okay, so going on to, you went in the van and, cried, and the next day went and started. What do you do when you feel stressed or discouraged? This is the rapid fire portion, by the way. So
yeah, no, I listen to a lot of music. I have these really nice headphones. I'm sure you've seen them on my Instagram, and they block out everything. And I put those on, and I usually do, I usually clean the van or work on the van or something. Or
what kind of music?
Right now,
no, just in general.
Right now I've been scream singing Sabrina Carpenter.
Okay.
Just
I don't know. Give me one of her songs.
It's Please, Please, Please by Sabrina Carpenter. Great song.
You're not going to sing it.
It's a very good song, but you'll love it.
Are you going to sing it?
No way. Absolutely not. No one ever gets
I don't know what Please, Please, Please is by Sabrina Carpenter. I need all right, I have to look it up. You won't give me the chorus. Okay. That'll go viral. That'll go viral. That part, you know.
That would go, yeah, my bad singing. No one's got to hear that.
Okay. What was your most difficult challenge in life?
Ever?
Yeah,
Oof. That's not a rapid fire.
I
We could
agree.
read a whole book about that one.
Yeah.
Um,
In the last 3 years.
in the last 3 years, the most difficult. Um, Trying to do a job that everyone else gets paid more money for and just like closing your eyes and just doing it instead. Like just keep doing it even though you know you're making less money than the people next to us,
Are
i.e.
you
the men that are next to you. That's probably the hardest thing.
because the men captains get more money? Basically, is what you're saying?
Yeah, men professional racers, men sailors, men captains. Yeah. It's
Really?
yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, by a lot actually. By a huge
I
huge
get
margin.
in like NBA, WNBA. I get the concept. More viewers, more revenue, right? If you're doing the same job as a man as captaining a boat or sailing it back, you should get paid the same if you're doing the same job.
Yeah,
Yes.
but the amount of things that I've heard over the years, like, oh, you don't have a family, so we don't have to pay you as much. You don't eat as much as a man, so we shouldn't have to pay you as much. You're a lot smaller, so we don't have to pay you as much. I mean, I've
All
heard
right.
everything under the sun. I've even heard, oh, well, we're going to have to hire another person because, two people equals one of, that guy. And I'm like, no. And then usually I just don't take those jobs because they're
So,
dumb.
do you save up money, invest in the stock market or anything like that? Like with all your captaining jobs, do you like what's your I don't know, best investment of time, or do you just like, I don't know.
I'm in the stock market.
You are okay.
Yeah, I'm in the stock market a little
That's
bit, but not.
our company Benzinga, that Raz report we do. That I started. Yeah, so we're a financial media company.
Cool.
So you probably use like Robinhood is my guess.
No, I started before Robinhood. I use TD Ameritrade.
Yep.
Which
And now
TD
Schwab.
Ameritrade just turned into Schwab. Yeah.
Yep.
So I've used that for years now, and
Me too.
mostly I was just putting, instead of having an IRA that was not going up very high, I switched over to the stock market. And that's, it definitely has gained a lot more. And then I use CDs through Chase,
All right. So if you wanted to, you could rent a place, buy a house, but you like the nomadic life where you don't have to be, at one place and be obligated to be there. Is that kind of the story?
Yeah. And yeah, definitely. I mean, I could buy a house, but I mean, maybe I will, maybe I won't. We'll see.
I mean, it's, you do what you enjoy. I mean, just because society says, oh, buy, like, I think you should get a bigger van though. Like that would be the next thing. Maybe go to like a RV or something, you can really, I mean, I could live out of RV. Like, that would be cool. You just drive and,
Yeah.
that could be the next thing. And,
Yeah, I've thought about it. It's hard when you're parking,
Yeah, that's a good point.
in friends' driveways and stuff.
oh, that's a
It's
great
harder.
point.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Right now I'm parked at a beach, which no one really cares because they think it's a work van. They don't think no one
Yeah.
would know. There's no windows or anything. You would never know that like I'm living in there.
Yeah. You would know. Yeah. I mean, so it's like,
It's super stealth.
and you shower like there too.
Yeah, I have an outdoor shower.
Yep.
And then sometimes I just shower at friends' houses and stuff. So
What about-
wherever it's
What
possible.
about laundry?
Laundromat.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And no, it's great. I love these different stories. I cannot believe you sailed for 130 days. This is like, these interviews are usually shorter, but 130 days doing this thing, no one there, on your own, no engine, just sailing 5 days, not going anywhere. It just shows an incredible amount of patience, fortitude, dealing with things that like giving an IV, overcoming obstacles. There's just so many life stories that coincide and with what you're going through and what you're doing, and to be able to have that kind of focus and start at 19, like you said, these kids usually like start at 3 years old, 4 years old. And it's absolutely an incredible story. You should follow her Instagram, Cole Brauer. We thank you for coming on the Raz Report. Sorry for going so long and a little technical
you're
difficulty, but you've just been awesome. And by the way, I kept you longer because I knew this is the one time you're like, you said you're not good at responding to emails. So I'm like, all right, I'm literally going to ask everything I want to ask and not be annoyed later that I didn't ask. So
cool. I love it.
So thank you so much for coming on. We'll send you the clips when it's ready, but appreciate it. I hope you can take more sales, take more of these things, but you're accomplishing goals, and I can't wait to see what the next 10 years hold. And whenever you feel stress or anxiety or whatever, just know that you're many people's heroes and you accomplished amazing, great things. So keep up the great work.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you so much.